Thanks everyone for coming to this Meet the Masters webinar. I'm going to be covering a few things throughout this. There's a list on screen now, but for those who can't read tiny fonts, I'm going to do a little bit of intro about myself, a bit of an introduction into games design as a design discipline and as a career. I'll be talking about the course, the Masters postgraduate course that I'm running here at Escape Studios. And I'll also be doing a bit of a mini lesson and an activity for anybody who wants to get involved. Towards the end, I'll be talking a little bit more about getting into video games and about Escape in general, and then there'll be some time at the end for a Q&A, which will be a place where I'll take questions or also talk to you guys about the activity if you guys want to get involved. No pressure, but it's something worth doing sometimes. So, about me, how I got started in games. I've been making games for as long as I can remember. Over 30 years of working in digital and physical games. Back when I started, there weren't as many games as there are now, or as many platforms, or as many tools, and everything was very expensive. So what I discovered quite early in life was that a lot of the times games are just toys with rules. So I used to spend a lot of time making up card games, just using your classic 52 card deck, changing rules in board games to find new ways to play, to try and spice things up. When how many different ways can you play the game Cluedo was one of the questions that I once started with. Turns out there's a lot. Making the most of what I had in general and mixing games together, especially game pieces from one board game to the next to see how that spiced things up a bit. Got into video games quite young. I was quite lucky. I got my first sort of PC computer in the early 90s. So I was there just as Doom 2 released with the Doom editor for making levels, which got me into level design and thinking about games from a technical point rather than just a hands-on point. Elder Scrolls Construction Kit came with Morrowind. Hammer Editor came with Half-Life, and that was the start of me as a younger guy in sort of secondary school, just making everything I could, being part of things called forums that don't exist now, being part of things called forums where we'd share files and give each other feedback, and yeah, real sort of bedroom developer scene. Eventually, I went into education in games. I did a little college course, and then was one of the sort of OG uni students in game design in the UK, where I sort of learned some more techniques, some methods and ways to apply concepts that I kind of already grasped but couldn't really codify. I got given the tools and the language to be able to turn those into designs. Went to work at Jagex, biggest game studio that I'd never heard of at the time. I was quite lucky being a bit older. When MMOs hit the scene, I already had a credit card, which meant I could pay in US dollars, which meant I didn't need to play free-to-play MMOs. So I missed the initial wave on RuneScape, but got into it big time when I started working with those guys. Worked with them on RuneScape, worked with them on the Transformers game they tried for a couple of years, but couldn't quite finish, and worked as part of their third-party incubation team, helping them make hits like Block and Load, and a few other titles that sort of released on Steam outside of the RuneScape verse, but still very much built in-house there. I learned a lot at RuneScape about free-to-play, a lot about monetization, mechanics, player retention, and they became kind of my specialization for a while. So I went to work for a mobile studio in London called Space Ape Games, who were just fantastic. A startup team sort of flooded with industry veterans from places like EA and Maxis. It's really just a really inspiring team to be a part of. I worked for those guys on Samurai Siege, which was their flagship product that was built to take on Clash of Clans back in sort of the very early days of mobile free-to-play. Transformers, the game's still running now, very good. Another sort of build and battle game. I helped them launch a arcade style racing shooter game called Fastlane, and then was part of sort of the incubation teams that created BeatStar, which is currently their biggest hit. In fact, it's actually so big that artists actually release their albums on BeatStar before they release them anywhere else. So if you like the idea of a mobile game that plays like Guitar Hero, but doesn't just have cheesy rock on it, like Dua Lipa and Eminem and anything else you can imagine, great. If you like country music, though, they've got a separate version called Country Star. That's enough repping for those guys. I don't owe them it. They were just lovely. Worked for Fundamentally Games for the last 5 or 6 years with those guys. They were an interesting company because they were sort of a hybrid of publishing and service. So what we'd do is I worked there as design director, working with sort of teams from all across the world who had ideas for games or who were working on games at very different stages in development, who knew there was something missing from their game, but didn't know what it was, or had something they wanted to accomplish but didn't know how to get there. So I'd help them fill the gaps in their knowledge, build their systems out, help them make more of what they had effectively, and then get them ready to launch their games. Really, really rewarding work, and it's absolutely why I ended up coming to work at Escape. I found the experience of helping people improve their own design chops was it's really cathartic and sort of uplifting for me. Really, really good vibe kind of work. So I'm looking forward to doing some more of that here with students. So a bit about game design profession. I want to talk like what do designers do. I think typically we can usually split designers into 2 types of designer. There are systems designers and content designers. So a game system designer is someone who's working on kind of like the overarching systems and interactions within the different elements of the game. So like this might be development of core mechanics. This might be working on the balancing of the gameplay through an iterative process. In short, the systems designer sort of constructs interlocking components that give players something to explore and experiment and enjoy through mechanics or systems and rules. Content designers are kind of the flip side of that. So the role of a content designer is more about enhancing specific aspects of the game once all the mechanics are established. So they're more focused on like quality and engagement of individual things within the overall picture. So like, as an example, in like League of Legends, champions would be designed by content designers. The items that go into the store that you can buy in the little shop, like Rabadon's hat or Rabadon's cap, one of those. That's content designers come up with that. Legends of Runeterra, card designers, great. World of Warcraft, people who are working on quests, raids, dungeons. These are all content designers. They're working on narrative and concepts and enjoyment and things. Whereas your systems designers are more likely working on, well, what are the mechanics? How do we make the mechanics of these boss fights work? How do we create a new spell system that makes the whole thing just feel a bit more alive? COD, a good example, mission designers, right? So mission designers are going to be your content designers, but the people figuring out the damage profiles of all the weapons are going to be systems designers. Hopefully that gives you some sort of quick mini insight into that. But there's so many sub-disciplines within those two that I just wanted to take a couple of minutes just to tap into those and talk about them. So I'm not going to go through all of these in length, but you have some of the ones that I know of and I've worked with. You have mechanics designers, narrative designers who are super interesting. Whereas the mechanics designer is sort of more of a mathematical mind. And being that might appeal to someone who loves number crunching. A narrative designer is more likely to be someone who loves literature or dialogue or soap operas. Some of the best narrative designers I've worked with are people who did sort of undergrads in like English lit or writing, so those sort of creative fields. That's the nice thing about game design is that you don't have to be a game designer by education to be a game designer by trade. There's lots of skills within it that we're always looking for. That's included on the postgrad course as well. I love to work with a mathematician. I'd love to work with a writer. I'd love to work with someone who just loves to paint. There's all sorts of things that you can bring that are creative in their own regard, even if you don't consider them purely creative, and bring them into game design because it's such a broad field. Level designers, another branch, tech designers. These are people who are really working out the nitty-gritty in the rule systems. Balancing designers, again, they're doing the numbers. Systems, they're doing the overarching sort of structure of things like, yes, we know there's combat, but why is there combat? What are the rewards? What are the benefits? What are the costs? How do we measure success? System designers are working on that level. Sound and economy designers. Could be working in-game or out-game economy. So they'll be looking at things, if it's World of Warcraft, like how many boars do you need to kill to level? And how does the killing of boars impact the amount of leather that's currently for sale in the auction house? And then monetization designers, which is a relatively new form of designer, something that I sort of branched out into and specialized in a lot, is people who work sort of predominantly in free-to-play, establishing value in games. So they're looking at this big picture of what do players find valuable in this game, and how do I make fair and mutual exchanges with the player to swap value that I hold for value that they hold? Which is a very polite way of saying, how do you get a user to spend in a game? But I prefer to think of it as more, how do I give you a good reason to spend in a game without ruining your fun? That's why in free-to-play games, my favorite thing is rewarded ads. I love those. Rewarded ad being so different to interstitial. Interstitial is where all of a sudden you're playing an ad right in your face. Hate it, disgusting, but rewarded ads, fantastic, because rewarded ads come along and they go, you're having fun, we're in a point, I just finished a level. Do you want extra points? Do you want extra cash? Do you want this item? If you want it, just watch the video. If you don't want it, no worries, peace out. And they are the best. I love them, and that's what I mean by mutual exchanges. I've got something you want, you've got something I want, and we agree on what's worth swapping for it. And usually it's a little bit of your time. So digging deeper into some of these mechanics designers, I want to talk about a little bit more deeper. So a mechanics designer, I've done a lot of this. A mechanics designer is someone who is specializing deeper within systems design. So you've got systems design, you've got mechanics design, where they are literally looking at the most specific of game mechanics, rules, and systems. Because what they're trying to do is drive and encourage interactions from players between the game, the characters, the objects, the environment. So they would be responsible for things like designing the rules of combat, or how movement works, or what mechanics need to be used to solve a given puzzle in a game. They're also responsible for making sure that those mechanics are balanced and fair, and that there's enough room for player agency, which if you haven't heard the term player agency before, please let me. Player agency is your ability to choose. So you get to decide how you do things. The more open and sort of transparent a system is, and the more options you have, the more agency is afforded to you to decide how the thing progresses. Baldur's Gate 3 is a great example of a game with incredible levels of agency, and Larian went to extreme lengths to cover their bases to make sure that the wildest things that you'll think of are kind of covered in the way the game plays out. Mechanics designers are also responsible for iterating, which means releasing and testing internally or externally, mechanics based on feedback. They'll collaborate with level designers, they'll collaborate with narrative designers, they'll collaborate with game artists and programmers to all come together and integrate these mechanics into the overall gameplay in a way that's sort of meaningful and most importantly, fun. Level designers, it's a bit more artistic, right? So a level designer is focused on, I think, crafting is the best way. So they're crafting engaging, challenging, and visually appealing levels for players to take part in. They're making environments and spaces to navigate, cool interactions within physical spaces for gameplay to occur within. So a level designer will be responsible for things like creating the layout of a game level. So that'll be including thinking about the pathways, how the player moves through it, where the open areas are, where the set pieces are. If it's something like Call of Duty is usually track, set piece, track, set piece. So they'll be working that stuff out, all to enhance the storytelling of your game and of your level based on the context of where you're at and where the game's at. They also are responsible for incorporating narrative elements into level design, such as like clues or details in the environment, or even like sort of non-direct or indirect storytelling, like graffiti in The Last of Us. On top of that, they'll also be doing things like designing the puzzles, because if the puzzle is environmental, then they will have a big part in designing it. They'll put obstacles and challenges in your way if it's a platformer. But yeah, essentially, it's about ensuring sort of you provide sort of really smooth, enjoyable gameplay experiences with the right kind of pacing and the right variety of encounters. And because of that, there's this, it just goes deeper and deeper and deeper. Level design is interesting because level design actually has its own sort of sub-genres almost. Genres wrong word, sub-specializations. So you'll get people like world designers who focus on the map, right? So Skyrim, they're working out where the towns are, where the cities are, where the dungeons are. You have room designers who are very much detailed, aesthetic driven. So they'll won't care necessarily that something really important in the next town or even the next building. They know that they're working with a room, and their attention to detail is so pinpoint that they care exactly where on a shelf a cup and a saucer are, or they care exactly how hidden a clue is under a bed. Occasionally you'll get people who are also doing just level design where it's just blocking out. Sometimes you'll have people who just block out. Blocking out means you'll put physical objects down, but they won't necessarily have details. So you'll be able to like put big cubes and shapes to make a path and to give people sort of a sense of scale, and then someone else will come in and then dress that. Usually a sort of a level artist. Last one to touch on, game monetization designer. I talked about that a little bit before because it's one of my favorites. But that is a content type of specialization with a little bit of system design responsibility. So what they'll focus on is revenue generation strategies and mechanisms that support sort of ongoing life of the game. So not just the money side, but the player satisfaction side. So they'll be designing systems to give players a chance to make really optional and optimized in-game purchases, but also creating opportunities for players to optimize their way they play, or working on systems that feed back into the main game loops to keep players playing more often and for longer. They'll incorporate ads and find things that fit in with the way players really play the game, generating revenue without sort of creating too much friction. But overall, they'll work closely with all the other aspects of game design, as well as the business and marketing teams. So if you have more of a business mind but want to make games, monetization design might be a really good avenue for you to walk down. I certainly enjoyed it. If you have any questions about any of these or want me to expand on any of them, throw them into the chat at the end. I'm happy to tell you everything I know about any of these specializations. So about the course. So the course I'm running is an MSc or a Master's of Science in games design. The course is aimed, this sounds super broad, this course is aimed at anybody who has a passion to make games, regardless, really for me, of whether you've done any games education before. It's not an art course. If you're a mathematician, this might be for you. If you want to make game economies, if you're an English Lit graduate who wants to use games as a way to tell your stories, this might be the one for you. But this isn't an art course. It's not about making the most beautiful thing. It's about making the most fun thing. So what will happen on this course, basically, it's all about meeting the industry's needs for new talent. And what we're focused on is the science and the psychology of game design, as well as the technical side of things to give you kind of like a really well-rounded skill set as a designer. So you learn how to take a game concept, in fact, you learn how to come up with a game concept, take that through sort of a paper prototyping stage, do another one, take that from a concept into something digital, and then do another one and take it through into sort of your own specialization of work, sort of building and learning about ideas like core interactions, game loops, systems, play testing. You also get hands-on experience with various types of game documentation, the production process, teamwork, obviously, and user experience design. So by the time you grad from the course, the dream is that you'll have this really versatile skill set that will help you thrive in the roles, but also you'll have made some games. And I think that's the real big one for me. I think there's nothing that allows me to communicate with a game designer better than having a game they've tried to make that we can talk about and bond over. It's hard to picture myself as a designer if I don't make games. And if you don't know how, that's what this course is for. So what I want to do is just give you guys 10 seconds to breathe, because I've just said a lot of words. I'm going to have a sip of water. I might have 2 more, and then I'm going to do like a mini lesson on core game loops. It's going to be 4 slides, quite repetitive, but at the end, an exercise for you guys to take to the chat or to the Q&A that we can talk about at the end. So, mini lesson, core loops. What is a core loop? That should have a question mark. And what does it do? So, what is a core loop? Core loop, very simply, is like the primary and kind of interlocking sort of triplet of behavior in games. So, whenever we're building a concept for a game as a designer, we're thinking in terms of a challenge, a resolution, and a reward. This is a simple sequence that makes most games make sense. So, examples of a challenge are things like, hey, what is the challenge in World of Warcraft? It's to reach the highest level and get the best gear, beat the best bosses. Okay, so how do I do that? Well, I need to level up, and then I need to beat the bosses. And what's the reward? Well, I'll get the gear. And then what's the challenge? Okay, the challenge is the next raid tier. Okay, what's the resolution? Get more gear. Okay, what's the reward? I've got more gear, I'm more powerful, I've got to do the next challenge. And it goes round and round. This is why it's a loop. Couple of examples of these, just to try and cement it more clearly. Super Mario, well, not Super Mario Bros. Yeah, Super Mario Brothers, Nintendo Entertainment System. Very simple game, very simple core loop. Nothing, no frills here, just really simple, enjoyable stuff. But that is fair considering the time that it released. There were no achievements back then. There were no deep systems. No one had really thought about metagaming. You just kind of stood either in an arcade with your friends or at a bar with your friends, trying to beat the high score of your sort of 3-lettered nemesis, or sneakily switching the machine on off again at the wall to reset it so you could be high score. It was a coin-operated concept that made it to sort of the original home consoles. But it had really simple goals, really simple, intuitive interactions, and it gave you very clear feedback. So what was the challenge in Super Mario Brothers? Well, the challenge was to get the high score. And you did that, you resolved that by running and jumping. And if you ran and jumped enough and stayed alive long enough, you got to the next level. And then you got to go for more high score because you're still on the same challenge. So you run, jump, next level, high score, yada, yada, yada. Very cool, very fun, simple, and we owe a lot to that game for working out that core loop. Because many coin ops around the time would only really concerned with taking more quarters or more 10p coins out of your pocket. Hollow Knight. I've chosen Hollow Knight for the second example because it is an extrapolation, in my opinion, of Super Mario Brothers. This wasn't chosen by accident. the objective or the challenge in Hollow Knight is far more elaborate than Super Mario Brothers, because whereas Super Mario Brothers was simple high score, this game benefits from sort of 30 years of game design development and improvement to offer you something a bit more than a score. It offers you a narrative, a very hidden sort of closed off narrative that only exists if you take the time to play and progress and explore the Hollow. And it's a very rich environment with lots of stuff, but lots and lots of things in the way, lots of opportunities to come back and do this loop. So you want to explore the Hollow, great. How do you do it? You do it through a mixture of combat and platforming. The reward for that are the items that you pick up along the way and the points you gain, sort of the currencies that you gain that you can spend to upgrade your Hollow Knight or to unlock new abilities like double jump that let you explore the Hollow some more. And you go around and you explore and you find new skills and you get more stuff. And eventually you get to explore the whole thing and sort of unravel the whole story of the game and fight some really interesting optional bosses. Very hard ones. It's a really cool game because what it does a lovely job of is tapping really deeply into that sort of base level of curiosity that a player has, because it leaves so much stuff just out of reach. Like your natural path through the levels will take you to places you can't finish, and you have to sort of mark them and remember them to come back to them when you can get through them. And it's just this really lovely thing. The combat in the game is a really sort of twitchy mastery test. So there are some bosses I just can't beat. There's the one where you go to fight sort of the council, the sort of the three elders. I've never beat it. It requires way too much mastery for me. But it's super cool, and it rewards optimization of play and optimization of skill. So yeah, a great example of what Super Mario could be. And one of the reasons why sort of more recent Mario games like Mario Wonder have really embraced the sort of the exploration side of things and giving you unlocks and power-ups later in the game that come back to take you back to start. In fact, even Super Mario World did that to a degree with the block system. You had until you'd hit sort of the big red button, you couldn't interact with the red blocks in the early levels, as an example. But yeah, this really took it to the 11. Third core loop example, I want to talk about Baldur's Gate 3. So in Baldur's Gate 3, Larian deployed a real winning combination of huge levels of autonomy and agency for players that enshrined in as much authenticity as they could. And what I mean by authenticity is, personal opinion, this game is as close as I can get to playing D&D alone or with a couple of friends without a DM. And it doesn't have quite the level of raw raw autonomy that D&D has, because D&D relies on a much bigger computer than any of us have on our desk or under our desk. But it does a real good job of synthesizing and emulating what it's like to be in a D&D campaign. Great mechanics, again, reinforcing that authenticity. Everything is a dice that happens on or off of screen. It's so lovely. Real nice example of freedom of choice, which is why it did so well, and which is why Wizards of the Coast and Hasbro are currently pivoting all of their investment into digital first games. I think they went on record recently saying that they want to make 2 Baldur's Gates 3 a year starting in 2025. I don't know if they know how long Baldur's Gate took to make, but I appreciate their ambition and I want to see what they come out with. Coming back to core loop in Baldur's Gate. So the sort of the challenge is making choices. You're repeatedly sort of fronted with choices that you have to make that will steer a story in one direction or another. Those choices are resolved through a roll of the dice. Whether that choice results in combat, whether that choice results in dialogue, it's all resolved through dice, either on or off screen. And the reward for that is progression of the overall story, the characters, learning more about the world, which obviously then leads through to more choices to be made. And this is the core loop for Baldur's Gate 3, and it's a really good one. So I mentioned a mini exercise at the start. So I want to cover that now. So I'm throwing it on you guys. If any of you want to do this, to have a think about a game that you've played recently, or even just a game that you know really well. And what I'd like you to try and do is using this sort of challenge, resolution, reward loop. Have a think about that game. Like, you know, what is the sort of core challenge of the game that you're thinking of? How do you resolve that challenge? What do you have to do to overcome that challenge? What's the reward when you do it? So I mean, this week I've been playing a game on itch.io quite a lot, which is it's I'm trying to remember the name of the game. It's called something like Night Roulette, Russian Night Roulette or something. It's a simple game where the second action in the game is that I'm playing the part of a knight. I have a revolver. The revolver has 6 rounds, 6 chambers. I can choose how many bullets go in. This is a really grim game. And choose how many bullets go in. And the more bullets I put in, when I finally go to confirm and pull the trigger, I will get more cash for surviving it. I have health bar. And I can spend that cash on upgrades. So things like more damage resistance or the ability to dodge the shot if one comes out, and things like this. And it's just a really nice game where the challenge there is to sort of stay alive and progress through the map, because the more of the map you do, the more money you get. So it's basically trying to just reach the highest level in the game. The challenge is, I think the challenge technically would be don't shoot yourself. The resolution to that is picking the right number of bullets to put in the revolver that meets your sort of risk reward, and the reward is that I'll get money to upgrade myself that'll let me try again to not shoot myself. It sounds darker than it is. It's a really light-hearted game, but I've been playing it a lot this week. Just trying to help myself understand what it is in there that really speaks to me. But yeah, try have a go at this model, see if you can come up with something. And check out that game on itch. Check out all the games on itch. Every free browser game on itch is worth playing. You'll learn so much. So while you guys have a think about that, if anyone isn't thinking about that, I'm gonna jump onto something else. So I've done a mini lesson, which gives you a taste of the sort of a very light taste of the kind of things that would be covered in the courses. I'm covering much greater detail than I did. You know, I kind of rushed through it because I only have an hour with you guys, so I don't want to spend trying to fit 3 hours worth of theory into 25 minutes. But I'm filling the time where I can and giving you just enough. But I wanted to make sure that I left some time to give general advice, because getting into the industry and even becoming a designer can be such sort of an insurmountable kind of task when you don't really have any direction, know where you're going. And there are things that I wish people had told me, and there are questions that I've been asked time and time again that I've got sort of boilerplate answers for at this point. And yeah, I just thought I'd impart a bit of that knowledge onto you guys now while I had you for 5 minutes. So if you want to be a games designer, I can encourage you to do so many things, but there's nothing I can encourage you to do that is more important than going and making games. It doesn't matter if you finish making what you make. It doesn't matter if you think what you make is good. What it's about is the process. So going out, trying a new tool. There are so many free tools for you to make games in. I found out the other day, never knew this before, I found out the other day people are making games in Blender. Blender is a 3D software. It's for making 3D models and 3D animations. But I found out people are making games in it, and that just blows me. I did not know. I had no idea that it had the power to do that as well, and I'm so curious. But there are tons. Like there's a bunch listed on here. Like there's a popular ones. You have your Unity, you have Unreal, you have Godot. Game Maker Studio's really good. CryEngine. There's so many. All worth checking out. I'd do it right away. In fact, there's even RPG Maker on Steam. It doesn't matter which version of it you buy; they're all essentially the same. But even that is somewhere where you can go and you can sit there, and with no experience and with no judgment, just try and make something. A good 99% of games I've ever made, I haven't finished. But every single one of those games, someone else has played. And I've put them out there, and I've had people look at them, even if they were awful, in my opinion, even if they made my skin crawl, which early on it does. Early on, everything you show someone is high risk because you just presume judgment. But really, in games, there's not a lot of it. We're all pulling in the same direction. We're all trying to make games, and usually, friends are pretty supportive. But itch.io, I'm not being paid by itch.io, but itch.io are super supportive. The community on itch is amazing. Making games, making anything, getting them to any stage in development that you can get them to, and putting them on itch is better than leaving them to rot on a memory stick or on your hard drive. Because once they go up there, someone's going to play it. Might not be a lot of people, but someone's going to play it. And that someone might leave a comment and might say, hey, I really liked this about your game, or hey, have you thought about this? Right? While those two pieces of advice, if those pieces of advice are useful to you and inspire you to go back and finish that game, that's amazing. But even if they don't, the next person that plays your game or sees those comments and plays your game, think that game was good. Oh, I wish they'd finished it. And then they see the comments and they go, wow, that's inspired me to finish this game or to make a game of my own that's a sort of a build on from this. That's how most games get made. Most games are made to be innovations or improvements on games that already exist, or hybrids of games that already exist, right? So putting your work out there, no matter how you value it, one person's trash is another person's treasure. So don't ever be afraid to release your stuff. That's the biggest piece of advice I can give. Just make something tonight. Go and make something tonight. If you've done the game loop exercise, take that game loop and have a think, like, what can you make that fits that game loop with the simplest of pieces? There could be blocks or boxes in Unity. As long as they're doing something, as long as you've thought about how it fits together, you've made a game. But yeah, it's better to make something than nothing, and it's absolutely a must that you release whatever you make, because it exponentially increases the lessons you can learn from it. So go do it, and just get lots of feedback. It's how we grow as designers. We do things, we don't do things good, we do things bad, we do things good, we do things better than good, we do things amazing, but it all builds up. Yeah, there are some people who are just artisans or like born naturals at these things, but not everyone is. I've talked at length about this now, but yeah, just go make things. That's all I can really encourage. A little bit about Escape. So coming back to the course, getting people in and getting people into Escape, it's really important to me because this place has been running over 20 years, bridging a huge gap between sort of industry education, massive partnership with Unreal. They were the sort of the first authorized training center in England or in the UK for Unreal, and they're currently still an Unreal academic partner, where members of TIGA, shortlisted for Best Educational TIGA Award 2 years running, are escapees, which is the word we use for alumni. They've gone to make some really great stuff. Like, we've got people working for Ubisoft, we've got people working for Forza Team, we've got people at Sony, just all over the place. In fact, some of our art team, I can't take credit for any of this, and the design team can't take credit for this because this is art. This is an art win. But we've had some artists go off from here who just returned an award for best in the world at the Rookies 2024, which is an incredible level of achievement for them as individuals and as artists. And you know, it's sort of secondary pride for me to be associated with the lecturers that I get to talk to every day who, you know, drove that and helped those guys get to where they got to in whatever small way they helped, which is what we're here for. So I'm out of slides because I'm moving on to the bit now about game loops, hoping that someone or anyone has had a shot at some. If not, I'm going to go back and I'm going to do 5 more, and I'll just let people in chat pick the games, but we'll see. So I'll open up chat. Open up Q&A. Here we go. I'll do general Q&A first. Doop, 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 doop. Hello, co-host.
Hello, hello.
Hello. Please, it is time for some Q&A and hopefully some core loops. Otherwise, I'll go back and do some myself.
I love that. Okay, so we do have a core loop just for you. So
Awesome.
the game is Fear and Hunger 2. So I know you seem very excited by that game.
I'm excited by all games.
Oh, love that.
Go ahead.
So the challenge is the puzzle is like a classic RPG. I really can't speak today. Combat with limb cut off opponent player. That sounds fun. Combat with the limb cut off from the opponent player. Beat the enemy before they beat you. The enemy time has coin flips. I'm just trying to read it through.
I think I just found it.
Have you found? Sorry, my laptop keeps
I found
like.
it. Don't worry, I got it. So yeah, that's what this is. So we're saying the challenge then is it's a puzzle-based challenge. Great. There's an opponent as a player's limb cut off. You have to beat someone before they beat you. Got it. So the beat someone before they beat you is the resolution. And then the reward is that you get to continue the investigation and to survive the city with 3 days. Ooh, that's crazy. And then that just keeps repeating. I guess that's so cool. I'm going to have to play it. I'm going to put it on my list now. Let's see what else we got. We got Left 4 Dead car loop. Car loop, kill as many zombies as you can with the best weapons and get through to another safe room. Resolve it, stay alive. If you kill your teammates, especially in the game, reward escaping alive. Yeah, it's not. That's pretty close. I think so. Left 4 Dead 2 is an interesting one because its core loop exists entirely within the match. You fully identified that. But a lot of games will expand this into between game change improvements. That's kind of the core of most sort of free to play and meta systems. It's why battle passes were invented. But yeah, so Left 4 Dead call it great. So yeah, your challenge is to survive to the end of the round. You've got that in there. I think it's in a different part, but it's absolutely the challenge. Get to the end of the round. How do you do it? By killing more zombies and staying alive. Great. The reward being one that you'll get to the end of the level and you get to go for another run. But also the reward is that in Left 4 Dead there's the exploration component to it as well, where by getting through these rooms, you will find new stuff and face totally different wave patterns and things. Yeah, it's really cool. It's a really cool loop. I love it. Right, I'm gonna do 2 more just for fun. Go back to the top one. No, that one. Wicked. Right. So, and the game I played a lot this month. I've been playing a heck of a lot of Luigi's Mansion 2 with my son. Luigi's Mansion 2 is a straightforward game. It's Mario spin-off series game where you're playing as Luigi and Luigi's going around catching ghosts in a magic vacuum. The challenge in Luigi's Mansion 2 specifically is to finish missions. Everything's broken down into individual missions. So whereas in Luigi's Mansion 1, you're kind of like it's more of an not open world, but like open building where you should go around doing stuff. The same in 3. In 2, the game was designed for a handheld device, so they chunked the content up to make it so that you could do it in smaller sessions on the go. So your challenge each time was to resolve a condition, such as clear up all the webs, or defeat the boss, or find the golden key. And those would be challenging. You'd do that by exploring the mansion and sucking up ghosts that got in the way. And the reward for it was that you'd complete your objective, and it would open up a new mission. And these missions would take you through sort of a really standard sort of escalation of explore, interact, puzzle, explore, interact, boss. And then the boss would usually be where you'd get a piece of the meta game in that, which was also the context loop, which was to collect 6 pieces of the moon that you're doing so that you can turn the village where all these mansions are back to nice, and go and fight King Boo. Another one I've played a lot lately has been, I'm just checking my Steam list. Oh, okay, yeah. So, and again, I've been playing Helldivers. I've gone back. I'm back on Helldivers, for democracy. Helldivers loop is so simple and so bite-sized once you really tear it down. I could do the joke. The joke loop is that the objective or the challenge is to bring democracy to the galaxy. The challenge being that there are a lot of bugs in between you and democracy, and the reward being that the rest of your Helldivers appreciate the democracy you brought, and that the citizens of each of these planets appreciate the democracy you brought. But the true version is not too far from it. It's that you are trying to go off on missions to sort of clear up the bugs, and the rewards, generally speaking, are just pure satisfaction and going in again and getting to brag and go, oh, it's not a deep game. It's a deeply interesting game in other ways, but in terms of its sort of core loop, it's not very deep, which is why it's a game that is only as addictive as you allow it to be. Cool. So, questions then. Let's move on to questions.
One of our attendees have asked about the job market. So the given situation with the current, games industry and how, the economy is in that one time, they just want to know, is it a good idea to pursue a master's degree while searching for a job within the games industry? And I think just adding on to that question, what skills will you learn whilst doing the masters that can help elevate you into the industry?
Oh, sure. Yeah, let's get into that. So, we as an industry right now, and I've come out of it myself around the same sort of blight of sort of large scale layoffs and studios closing. And I think the one thing, there are a few things I'll say about this. These are personal opinions. These are not Escape's opinions. This is a natural part of the games industry. You need kind of a long view appreciation of game industry as a business to really agree or disagree. And I've been disagreed with a few times, but I am very confident this is very natural. So the games industry for a long time was bedrooms and basements, and it expanded very quickly. And there are a lot of studios starting up, trying to make the next big hit on PC and console. This is talk about the 90s, early 90s. A lot of them folded because they expanded and they contracted. You come to the late 90s when everyone's trying to make the next Half-Life or the next Elder Scrolls, and it's expand and contract. So many first-person shooters. Early 2000s, 10 million studios making zombie games. Like, there's just this very much an ebb and flow of the industry where it expands and contracts, but over the last 10 years, it's expanded at such an exponential level, like boundless levels of investment, everyone trying to have the next big free-to-play money printer and all these kinds of things. It was setting itself up for a bit of a correction, and I think that's what we've seen. But it has affected, rather than just affecting those teams, it's affected everyone, because it's created shrinkage in the level of investment capital available to studios, because most game teams don't have the luxury of being able to make things off their own pocket. You know, they're usually relying on someone to finance. That's a financing company that specializes in games that they've pitched the game to, who have agreed, yeah, your team's good, yeah, your game's good, let's put all this money in. That's why indie exists. Indie's the antithesis of that. Indie studios are doing that out of their own pocket, but indies aren't closing down. It's big studios that are closing, having mass layoffs. So yeah, it's spooky and scary, but there's tons of jobs, and what I see a lot of jobs for right now are designer jobs. Because once again, the teams that are surviving, or teams that are starting up now, are in the same position they're always in, which is what game do we make, and how do we make that game? How do we make all these systems and features? How do we fill it with content and levels? All that sort of stuff. So I think it's wide open in terms of trying to find the work. But tagging that into the second question, what does this course offer in that regard? The point of this course is to catapult your understanding of design. Right? So there are plenty of people who've played a lot of games, who've done maybe a college course or done like an undergrad in game design and think, right, I'm ready to go and be a game designer, but they don't have any industry experience, and they might not have ever released a game. In spite of knowing how a core loop works, maybe they know exactly what intrinsic, extrinsic motivations are, and they understand player psyches, and they're very academically focused and understand all that cool stuff, but they've never applied it. And the first barrier they're going to hit is, so what games have you made? And they go, oh, none. You go, okay. On this course, you will make games. You'll make a lot of games. You'll also have the chance to figure out what you want to specialize into as a designer. And there's an entire module dedicated to you exploring that specialization, being graded based upon your ability to deliver a project brief that you come up with in agreement with me. So it's super fun. Tons of games get made. You get hands-on experience with the right tools, and you're working with me and other industry professionals, people that have done decades in games in various disciplines, who are all there at your beck and call to help you get rid of the sort of easy questions or the early questions in your sort of development before those questions start sounding silly. We're there to springboard you into something better. I think that's the answer I want to give on that.
So next question is, when you say make games, do you mean publish them or just make something that's playable that we can show? The user, so the attendee who's asked this question, has some games that they don't think are good enough or polished enough to be published. Do you think it's also a good thing? Do you think that's also a good thing to get into the industry?
Yes, awesome. Yeah, it is. It's great. Right, so the games that. So talking about the course, we'll make games that, because I think all games are publishable. That's my first statement. All games are publishable, whether it's self-published on itch or released into the wild on some of the forum. Published can take on many forms. There's professionally published with things like marketing budgets and sort of campaigns where they're getting your game out there. There's people who early release things on Steam. And then there's people who put stuff up on itch, and I think all of those are forms of publishing. With games that you're making prior to working for another person, making the game they want, making your own games is incredibly valuable, and releasing them, regardless of the state of polish you think they're at, is so important, because it gives you the opportunity to get feedback. Which is so incredibly useful to stop us from navel gazing and designing inside of our own one-person echo chamber. I think the best thing I ever did was put my mods. I'm just going back to the 90s. Putting my mods and level designs out onto forums for people to download them, run them in their own version of the game, and come back to me and say, "Oh, hey, this bit was cool, but this bit was horrible. But here's an idea," or this bit was really, really cool. Thanks for making this. Have you tried doing it this way? Or, oh, this would be, and you get this conversation almost, or this loop, rather than being worried about call loops, you get into a feedback loop of I do something, I try something else, I put it out and I get feedback and I rebuild it. And that's actually a really key part of the graduate of the postgrad course, is that there'll be a huge focus on test and iteration. So releasing what you have, at least to the very least to your peers, getting feedback on that and incorporating that feedback back into the game you're making, to make it better than it was when you started. So yeah, regardless of what you might think is polished, and I've said it earlier, your trash is someone else's treasure, and a lot of designers, like when I'm on itch, as a great example, I can see past the polish, and because I look at games from a systems and concept perspective, I can see past the polish. The beautifulness, or the aesthetic of a game visually, not the gameplay aesthetic, but the visual aesthetic, is so secondary to me. It's one of the reasons why I sort of roll my eyes whenever I see games being slated for their graphics. Like, they matter, and they change the overall experience someone has with your games, but they don't invalidate the value of a game. I hope that answers your question.
Amazing. Another question is, what trends are emerging currently in the games industry that will be sustainable for the next 10 years? This attendee used to work on the educational software years ago. And how can kids at school develop their own games and get recognized?
So much fun to answer. Okay, right. I'm conscious of time, so I'm not gonna, let me go through it. So, what trends are currently emerging in the game industry that will be sustainable for the next 10 years? Wow, that is, if I knew that, I would be every investor's best friend. I don't know. I don't know what's emerging that will be sustainable in the next 10 years. If you'd asked me 10 years ago, just rolling back 10 years to 2014, if you would have asked me if consoles would have adopted free to play and really burnt themselves a lot on that, I would have said no, because I would have been confident at that time that console teams and AAA teams are settled and already had a model in place to sell premium products. But the more you spend on a game, the more you got to recoup, and with the shelf price of a game not really rising with inflation at all much over the last 30 years. I still remember buying games for Super Nintendo and they were $69.99. I guess there are some warnings that might have happened, but yeah, what's happening now that's going to be bigger? I think if anything, the sort of democratization and sort of widening of the lanes in terms of distribution. So things like platforms like itch and things like Epic breaking into the iPhone sort of environment with their new platform, with games like Roblox and even Fortnite giving out tools that you build entirely different games inside their platform that you just get to play just because you own Roblox or just because you own Fortnite. I think those kind of very much, I think they kind of really open the playing field up to almost anyone to make a game that other people can enjoy. And it just really breaks down the barriers between you making a game and someone playing it. So teams that find a way to really leverage that are going to be the teams that look really good in 10 years' time.
Amazing. And one final question is, which is one more and we're good to go. So
Okay.
you touched on this a bit earlier about some of the software the guys should be using to create
Yes.
games. What software would you be using on the course?
The primary piece of software we use on the course is Unreal Editor. So whenever we're making digital products on the course, we're doing it using Unreal Editor, and that'll be version 5.4 currently. I don't think another one will come out before the course runs. We do this 2 reasons. One, we're accredited and in partnership with Unreal. It's a big thing for us working with those guys. And 2, it gives real consistency across the materials, so that the work people are doing in other parts of the of Escape can blend into your work. We have on the course a huge group project module where multiple disciplines all kind of converge to work together in teams. We do that on undergrad and postgrad. So yeah, that's it. Unreal. In terms of other things you might use in design, I'll come to this properly, but at the end of the month, I'm going to do a taster session about specifically this, using a piece of software, or a website, I should say, called Machinations. Really cool tool for prototyping game systems. And I'll be doing a session about that. I just want to go back. Sorry, there was a question I only answered half of, and I remember there's a subsection to the previous question about sort of kids in sort of early stage of education and what they could be doing. Just come back to that. Yeah, for kids, there are so many child-friendly tools out there. I know that Godot is doing Godot and another team are doing a new version of their scripting system soon, where it's sort of block-based scripting. And what I mean by that is almost Lego-ish. You'll sort of pull colored blocks together that create statements and loops and build out the scripts of your game. But for very young people, just experiment with games, making board games, making games with your hands, you know, grabbing a pen and paper and some dice and a deck of cards and just seeing what feels fun. I think they're the best things. There's a really good product you can get on Amazon. It's called the White Box, and it comes with a book called the White Box Diaries, and it's basically a paper prototyping toolkit. I have 2 or 3 in the house that are sort of half used. We've got about 10 at the studio still. That I use them with my kids at home. So me and my oldest boy, we just make up games because he has all kinds of games but gets bored really quick. So we'll sit down, we'll go, right, well, what's cool, what's not cool? What can we pinch from this other game to put into the game you're still enjoying that'll give you another 2 weeks of enjoyment out of it and give us another night on the couch playing it. So yeah, just playing games, thinking about games as systems and experimenting.
Amazing. Well, that's all questions from my end. You're free to carry on.
Great. I only have one more slide, so this should be super quick. So I mentioned a moment ago there's going to be more things. So we have an open day coming up for the postgraduate and short courses. That's going to be taking place on the 21st of August. That's on site in London at 6 Mile Passage, but also I believe, and I'll be told if I'm wrong on this, there'll all be an email that you guys get that there is a way to take part in that online, remotely. I'll be on site, but you can join remotely. Second thing I want to tell you guys about is a taster session. So I'm doing a taster session for the Games Design Masters course on the 28th of August. And that's going to be me using a piece of software called machinations.io to talk through the mechanics and systems in a game called a web game called Cookie Clicker, where I'll be building the game from the ground up using machinations to show you how the systems in the game work and how the loops work, and to show you how you could build an entire game without ever writing a line of code, and have something there that you can test and understand. To help you really get a grip on what your game is and what it does, so that when someone does come to build it, because designers don't always build them themselves, when someone comes to do the hard bit, the real coding bit, they actually know what you're talking about. And that's everything. Thank you.